I forgot to introduce myself earlier. For those who don't know me, I'm Ryan Hill. I'm the executive director, and I was the founding principal of Team Academy. So I'm supposed to just speak very briefly because Mayor Booker took up all my speaking time. But there's a lot of kids here who had me as their 5th grade teacher, and if I just speak briefly, they're going to think I'm sick or something, and we don't want to do that to them. So maybe I'll speak fast instead. Please help me thank one more time our honorees. So Governor Kane, again, a huge supporter and a huge, and was the education governor in New Jersey. A huge thanks to Councilwoman Crump, who represents our great city and the great South Ward of Newark, and Rick Braddock, who you'll hear from later, who is one of the earliest supporters of team schools and whose generosity and of both resources and advice has just been boundless. So please help me thank them again. I also want to recognize some important community leaders who are here. So we had Mayor Booker here earlier, who we all know is a huge supporter of education reform in Newark. We also have Steve Adubato Sr. here, who not only is an important political leader, but runs a great charter school called the Robert Treat Academy. And we have Shavar Jeffries, our founding board chair, who was recently elected to be the chair of the Newark Public Schools Advisory Board in a landslide election showing tremendous grassroots support. You'll be hearing, yep. You'll hear a little more from Shavar later, but what's critical to note here is that we are in an environment, a political environment that is extremely supportive of aggressively pursuing what's best for kids, and the future of our city is brighter than ever. And last part of this first part of the speech is that I have an announcement to make. Last year, one of our previous honorees issued a $1 million challenge. If we could find 9 other people to match his grant in just 1 year, he'd give us $100,000. Literally 3 hours ago, we got the last of these 9 pledges. So please join us in thanking those 9 donors, who we're not going to mention all by name, but in helping us raise that $1 million. And then the mayor mentioned Doris Fisher, who along with her husband, Don, founded the Gap, Banana Republic, and Old Navy back in 1969, and who were the visionaries who way back in the mid-1990s saw 2 schools in Houston and the Bronx, 2 little middle schools in the midst of 2 gigantic cities, and said these schools, these KIPP schools, will one day change how American public views urban education. More importantly, the extraordinary generosity, both in terms of funding and leadership, that Doris and Don and their family have given to KIPP over the years was the catalyst that has allowed us to grow nationally to 83 schools, serving over 20,000 low-income students across the nation. So far, over 80% of KIPP students have gone on to college. Doris and Don could not make it to the event where we honored them last year, unfortunately, but she has made it this year, so please help me in giving a warm thanks to the Fisher family for all they've done for KIPP. So what I'm here to do is introduce 3 founding teachers, but let me start by telling you a story that will give you a profile of the kind of teachers we look for to start our schools. And all these teachers that we have in our schools have similar stories, but the one I know best is that of Heidi Moore, so I'll use hers to give you a sense of who all these folks are. I've known Heidi since 1999, when Teach for America placed both of us at a school, it wasn't providing much of an education, called IS 164 in Washington Heights, New York. And probably the best story I can tell about you is what she did for a young lady named Christina. And most of the names that I use today, other than Christina's, are made up, but they're real people. But Christina, it was her name, and she came to IS 164, the daughter of Dominican immigrants, not speaking English very well, doing okay but not great on standardized tests. And, but she was extremely hardworking, and she also got lucky. She had one Teach for America teacher after another. One of them was me, until her 7th grade year, when not only did she have Heidi as one of her teachers, but since there was no guidance counseling going on in the school, Heidi offered to work with her and a handful of others to apply for high school scholarships. Hour after hour, day after day, they worked to get the paperwork, the essays, and the application just right. The result of those dozens of late-night sessions was that Christina got a full scholarship to an elite high school, and after that, a full ride to Columbia University. So after seeing the kind of impact one great teacher can have on one young lady, I thought, what if we started a school where there were only great teachers? So it became our goal to build a school full of Heidis so we could create a school full of Christinas. And build a school full of Heidis we did, finding 4 unbelievable teachers, one who would become the New Jersey Teacher of the Year, all of whom would win KIPP's National Teacher of the Year award, one of whom would adopt a student, and all of whom are still with KIPP in some capacity. And then we built more schools with equally great teachers. At Rise, we had Christoph, Marielle, Ranjana, and Nima. All of one of them are still with us. At NCA, we had Ernst, Suma, Bridget, Andrew, and Faith, and all but one are still with us. And at Spark, we have Diane, Carrie, Lakeisha, Matt, and Matt, Ashford, Emily, Chrissy, and Ruben, and all are still with us. And all of these great teachers had their own Christina stories, and all of them were among the very best teachers in their schools. And yet what you're going to hear tonight from these teachers is that even for a crew of teachers this good, the work is just very hard. We think that is an important lesson for everyone here and everyone in the education reform world to hear, because we've learned a lot over the years, and one of the things we've learned is that this is harder than we thought it would be and harder than most people think it is. If only we, I hear this pretty often. I was on a panel recently where someone said this, if only we could end tenure or seniority-based hiring or have merit pay or more schools of choice, we'd eliminate the achievement gap. And my thought on this panel was, thank goodness our teachers didn't hear that. Yes, those conditions are necessary, absolutely, but they are not sufficient. Because for every accomplishment we celebrate up here, there were missteps. There were failures, there were kids who we didn't know how to reach. With every single one of them, we kept trying as hard as we could, working inhuman hours with the greatest teachers in the world. Whether it was Lauren Cook staying after school until 5 a.m. working with Kevin and Ayana on their high school applications, Kevin Brown paying a 10 p.m. visit to a family in crisis, or Pallavi pulling an all-nighter to make sure the computers were working, or Matt chasing down and tackling the guy who stole the computer. That actually happened. But sometimes it's just not enough. In the last year, Jamal dropped out of high school and Lakia got pregnant. That really happened too. There are these moments, which Jamal and Lakia and the others, are moments that tax the souls of even the best and most successful teachers. And these are the stories that also need to be remembered, even as we celebrate our kids' success. And even the success stories we've had have been very hard. It was hard when Jamina lost her guardian. It was hard when we had to drive her to school each day to help her, to keep her foster parent from pulling her from our school. It was hard when the state yanked her from that parent and was going to put her in a shelter. And it was hard when one of our teachers rescued her from that fate, fostering her until we found a home. And it was hard when we had to say goodbye to Jamina when she went off to boarding school. So what you will hear from our teachers is a blunt assessment of the challenges we face in doing what's best for our kids. But hopefully what you'll also leave with is a sense that yes, the achievement gap is a problem as old as our nation, but also that it's a solvable problem if we look at it soberly and understand that at the beginning and at the end of this story, the one thing that will always remain true is that fixing education in this city and in this country is 100% dependent on having great, committed, unreasonably dedicated teachers like the ones you see here tonight. For me, this reminder that it can be done came on April 7th from an email and a phone call. The first was the email, and it was from Christina. She's a senior at Columbia now, and Heidi and I had been counseling her on her post-collegiate career. Here's what she said. Dear Mr. Hill and Ms. Moore, you two are the reason I applied for Teach for America. I'm excited to tell you that next year I'll be going to Houston to teach 5th grade. Thank you for so much for all you've done, Christina. So I thought that was going to be the best news of the day. But I was wrong, because the call then came in from Jamina. It was also an update, and her message was short. Mr. Hill, I got into my first choice school. I'm going to California next year with a full scholarship. I'm so excited. Next year, Christina will teach kids like her, and Jamina will attend an outstanding college, all because they saw teachers who saw their inherent greatness and did what it took to enable it. So the next 3 people you hear from will be some of those founding teachers whose dedication has paved the way for the kids you've seen tonight. You'll hear from Ruben Restrepo, who grew up just down the road in Union City and who's a first-year Teach for America teacher, and who has created from scratch, you saw him here earlier, a Spanish program, and a capoeira class in just his first year of teaching. You'll hear from Bridget Hitchings, who came from Weequahic High School to help start Newark Collegiate Academy, whose biology students drastically outperform their peers around the city, and whose understanding of the adolescent mind has enabled our high school to develop an incredible track record of high achievement and low attrition. But first you'll hear from none other than Heidi Moore, who saw the absurd injustice of a school that would produce one kid like Christina and send in a good year maybe 15% of its kids off to college, and start a school, Team Academy, that would send, well, I'll let her tell you. Please welcome to the stage Heidi Moore, Bridget Hitchings, and Ruben Restrepo.